All right, let's talk about calculating the market size using a disaggregate method of coming up with that number. We've done this before in class, but let's walk through it one more time. So I'm thinking about opening a sporting goods store in Boulder City. Does that seem like a good idea? Well, what would I need to know to be able to make that decision? Well, of course, since we're doing a marketing planning and analysis class, the first thing I would need to do is to do a situation analysis of the sporting goods business in Boulder City. One of the key pieces of information that we would like to know is what is the overall size of the sporting goods market in Boulder City? Well, to decide whether or not this is a good idea, one of the things I'm going to need to do, of course, is to determine the sporting goods market size in Boulder City. The question is, how do I calculate the size of that market? Well, what information do I need? So what would I need to know to be able to calculate the size of the sporting goods market in Boulder City? Well, using a disaggregating approach, I could start off by finding out the total sporting goods market size in dollars for the whole United States. Then I could figure out how much of that market is concentrated in Boulder City. Well, how would I do that? Well, of course, I'd have to probably use some sort of a per capita method. That is, I would have to find out what the total size of the sporting goods market is. Then I would need to break it down into how much sporting goods each person in the United States purchases on the average, and then figure out how much of the total population is concentrated in Boulder City. So I could do that if I could find some of that information. All right, so what I did was I went to the U.S. Census of Retail Sales and found the sales of sporting goods in the United States. And you'll notice I go back here about 15 years or so. And I go back from 2021 all the way back to 2007. And you'll notice that over most of the years, the growth rate is between, minus, in this case, minus 4% up to positive 6 or 7 or 8%. With the exception of the last 2 years, in which case the market grew significantly in 2020 and 2021. Of course, that is in part due to the pandemic, where individuals were sort of homebound and needed to buy sporting goods so that they could self-recreate. So I have that data. And as I look at that data, you'll notice that there was approximately $67 billion of sporting goods sales last year in the United States. How much of that was in Boulder City? Well, that's the quick question. Well, to get to that, I need to get down to a per capita number. That is, sporting goods purchased per person, and then calculate how much of that is in Boulder City. So, first thing I do is I find the U.S. and Boulder City populations, and you'll notice here that I have the populations for Boulder City and the U.S., and I have that from 2007 up through 2021, where the U.S. population is 332,915,073, and Boulder City's population is 16,948. You'll notice that the U.S. population is growing by less than 1% and around 0.6% per year, where the Boulder City population is not growing very fast, but it's growing a slightly faster than that. But once again, growing at a very slow and consistent rate. So now what? Well, the next thing I need to do is compare the two populations. And when I do that and I divide the Boulder City population by the U.S. population, I find that Boulder City is a very, very small percent of the U.S. population. And in this case, it is 0.000051 for 2021. And you'll notice if I go back a few years down to 2015, it was a little bit less, but not much. Now I need to add the sporting goods sales. And so I add the sporting goods sales by year. Once again, the $67,177,000,000 for 2021. It was only $53,911,000 for 2020. So you'll notice that the sporting goods industry grew by 25% in just 1 year. And if you take a look at 45,621,000 or 621 million compared to 2020, where there was almost $54 billion, that again is another almost 20% increase. So the market has grown dramatically. That is from 45 billion to 67 billion in just 2 years. And I also then have all the calculations ready to go. So now I calculate the Boulder City sporting goods sales by multiplying 67,177,000,000 times that very small percentage that Boulder City is of the U.S. total population. And I get a number that is $3.42 million. And if I go back a couple of years, it would have only been $2.25 million. Okay, so now, what is that number actually telling us? Well, the $3.42 million is our best estimate for the total amount of sporting goods purchased by the residents of Boulder City in 2021. How do I take that data and determine how many sales I would have at my sporting goods store in Boulder City? Well, that's a critical question now here, right? Remember that this $3.42 million are total revenues for the sporting goods business. But the question would be, well, how much of the Boulder City sporting goods market would I get if I had a store in Boulder City? Would I get 25% of the market? 10% of the market? 50% of the market? Well, I'm going to have to do some more research to determine what that number would actually be. But at least now I know approximately how much of the U.S. sales of sporting goods I can allocate to the people who live in Boulder City. Now, this makes the assumption that everybody in the United States spends the same amount. The people in Boulder City could spend on the average more or less than the typical residents across the United States. And so I'm going to need to factor in a number of other little bitty factors to determine exactly what I think the sales are and make a conservative estimate. So what do I know? I know that that there's a little over $3 million in sales of sporting goods in Boulder City. I still don't know how much of those sales I would be able to get in my store, and I don't know what the gross profits would be because I haven't yet found out what the gross profit margin is. And I don't know what my percentage of the total sales are because I haven't looked at the competitive landscape very closely. But at least I have a starting point now by being able to determine the amount of an estimate of the amount of sales of sporting goods in Boulder City.